This is the Unscripted Podcast. So how did it feel?
That's a pretty broad brush. What you talking about?
I'm talking about when you got smoked Sunday.
Smoked?
Yeah.
With what?
At the red light.
Oh, Bob, I just want to let you know, I out of the goodness of my heart, let you pull on me.
Oh, okay. No, you jumped. Ben, he even jumped the gun at the red light trying to get ahead.
Bob, I clearly had the right inside lane.
What it boiled down to is I drive an American car.
You're right.
And he drives he drives a communist car.
I can't help it, Bob. It's just the.
So if y'all saw two preachers racing to get to church, you just know that we just want to be with the Lord's people a little bit quicker.
That's right, exactly right, and trying to set a good example. You know, we're gonna.
We got
obey
all
laws.
We got off the interstate. Hey, we really didn't break any laws, per se.
No.
But anyways, Ben, we got off the interstate, and I just held back just a little bit, so maybe Chris wouldn't see the nose of my car, and I was like, he don't even see me. And really and truly, he saw me the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, his boys are both looking off to the right. I was like, I'm gonna jump the gun on him right here. Well, right before the light hits green, like Chris going, he went on and took off, and I was like, I got to catch him.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot easier with yours. You got a V8, you know, and yours is
American-made car. Go ahead.
Yours is, yeah, exactly, American-made. Yours is built on a truck frame.
Not a communist.
Yeah, mine's a 2013 Honda Pilot.
Chris is a patriot, man, until it comes to, his money,
his
car.
But listen,
then he supports communism.
No, listen, I have a 2005 or 6 model Super Duty with 90,000 miles on it, and it runs dead dinosaurs just like yours does, made here in America. As a matter of fact, I filled it up. I carried that thing over there today and his sheet metal breaker. We put an extension on the shop, and we filled it up on the way back. And I was just happy that it didn't take $200 to fill it up.
I know it.
Because now diesel's like $4 a gallon or something like that in pedal. Yeah. And so
the government's coming through for us.
That's right. My Harley, it runs. My Harley runs good old American 93. You can't even run 87. I got to run. Basically, it costs the same amount per gallon to fill up my Harley as it does to fill up my truck.
Yeah. I noticed, with your shoulder, you hadn't been able. You need me to drive your Harley some?
Man, I'm telling you, like I gotta cut my grass either today or tomorrow.
You may come cut it.
No, I think I can do it. I mean, but I'm gonna tell you, dude, it's a ball.
Yeah. Hey, I learned a long time ago, like how to hand drive it one hand. You can't go as fast or whatever, but
right. Yeah. Well, mine, it's just, especially down near the pond. I'm always scared I'm going to be digging. Because I'm telling you, Bob, last week, the boys were getting the bucket for some. Oh, I remember what it was. It was a couple weeks ago. Because we took the granite countertops that were in our kitchen where we done this kitchen reno. Mm-hmm. We took the countertops off, and they said, what are you going to do with them? I said, I'm going to put them down under the barn and just drive on them. I'm just, because all that spot down there stays so marshy. Right. So I just flipped them over, put them down in the barn to the tractor.
Get a little traction on the other side of the granite.
So what we used to eat on, now we drive on. Mm-hmm. I thought there's a sermon there.
Absolutely.
When you put them things in, it was the most valuable thing in the world.
It's whatever good, sermon. That's what every good preacher will do. Everything's a sermon.
But, man, I'm telling you, I sent the boys down there to get the bucket. And because the forks or the bucket or fork, I can't remember, whichever one I sent them down there to get that wasn't on the tractor. Mm-hmm. Bob, literally every cinder block I had left is in the pond now. They drove the tractor down in, and they got it so, Bob, it was in such a bind. So I called my neighbor Andrew, and I was
four-wheel drive. You
my tractor's four-wheel drive.
All four spinning.
And I don't mean just spinning. I'm sitting on the case. You understand?
Yeah.
And so I was stacking cinder blocks underneath the bucket, picking it up, right? With the bucket, so that my front tires are off the ground. Trying to drive myself out, and kind of walk myself.
Yeah.
But the problem was I would push the cinder blocks over into the mud. You get down there in that old this old sloppy
Mississippi mud.
Yeah, I mean it's just like you can't say it's
gone
like pudding.
Yeah.
That's the best way you can describe it. It's like pudding. And so, man, I called Andrew. His tractor, they dropped the doggone something on it, busted it all to pieces. So his was in the shop. Mr. Ed's over here, his is a 2-wheel drive. I thought I pulled his out before. So if he comes down here, there'll be 2 of them stuck. I was just in a bind here. But, that's a problem with the pond.
How'd you get it?
Well,
Super duty?
No, you believe it or not, I got it out with, I put the winch, side-by-side's got a winch on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I put the side-by-side behind it, and I just needed to get out of that rut. Because what happened is, here's another spiritual lesson. The boys had got the thing mired up before they came and got me. They done got it down on the hall
because they're
here.
like, Dad's going to get mad at us if we get stuck, so we're going to keep working with this. Don't tell him.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm up there for 20 minutes, like, what is taking them so doggone long to get the tractor? Well, when you peek out the window and you can't see tread, you just see gray tires. You're like, I know exactly what they've done. It's just God. It's just turned into a big racing slick, and it's like, all right, I know what they've done, So you got to go down here and help them. It was it was a mess. So every cinder block I got, it cost me, them blocks. It was a split face block, right? They're about $6-7 a piece. So there's probably $150 worth of cinder block in the pond now, just to get
and
me
they're
out
so
of
deep down in there, they're not even fishing tractors for you.
Yeah, you can't
they're
even
in the mud.
Yeah, they're gone. GAWN gone.
All right, we're gonna spin the wheel today. We hadn't spun the wheel and seemed like an age, so we're still answering your questions.
All right, let's spin the wheel. Number 15.
All right.
So number 15 is on our list is, how do I raise good kids and protect them from this world?
All right.
That's a big question, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's when you think about raising your kids, that's one of those questions that's just right up there with, decision making as far as becoming a Christian or not. Of course, you immediately you think about, the kind of your Bible verses, Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he should not depart from it. Well, that's the principle of it, and we can encourage people with those verses, but they're saying, how do I train them? Yeah,
that's the people come to you and they want this. Here's what happens is people, they see us at our spiritual best. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, when we're preaching.
Yeah. They see us at our spiritual best.
Yeah,
and
I'm prayed up, studied up.
Yeah, all those things. And so, like, I'm going to sound really smart. I'm going to sound, I'm going to sound like, because whatever I'm going to talk about, like, I really want to make sure I cover it well. Well, what they don't realize is it's just to talk about this one thing. I had to spend all week getting us there, right? And so you get these questions like, how do I do this? How do I do this thing? And you're just like, man, they want this mic drop verse.
Right.
They want this thing that's like a mic drop verse.
Sometimes you got them,
But when it comes to raising your kids, right?
Yeah, we're in the ring still.
Yeah, like
we're in the MMA fight.
Yeah, dude, with the bloody nose.
Yeah.
And like Aiden, in our kids class, that boy that you introduced us to, that's kind of coming to our class now on Wednesdays to our Next Tech class. Well,
y'all pray for that class too. Like Chris is doing a really good job with his shop with machine shop and things, and they're not only teaching kids valuable things, but also, you're teaching them a skill. But not only that, but like the spiritual application and life application. So y'all pray for that ministry that Chris is leading.
Well, it's the church. The church has his ministry.
Yeah, you're right. It is the church. And you are the church.
Well, I'm just thankful that we can do it.
That's right. We are too. But anyways, say a prayer about it, and for God to be glorified through all of it.
Yeah, amen. I remember digging the foundation, thinking, Lord, I really want to do this for your honor, for your glory. And, sometimes I have a hard time separating out me in this, but I really want to keep you at the center of this. So help me to make sure that you stay the center of it.
My goodness, that's a principle for, if we could instill anything in our kids, let that be let God be at the forefront of every decision of seeking first the kingdom. And so whether you're building a shop or whether you're building your house or whether you're buying your car or whatever, God, let me you be in the forefront of this.
Well, that's what what I was getting at is like Aiden, like the one guy, the newest guy. I brought him in not necessarily because it was because of your connection. In the fall we'll be able to bring in some new kids, and so but he's kind of struggling a little bit with how to do this Bible study thing. That we start each class with, and the idea behind it is that we're trying to help them understand how with each class. Ben and I shot a video in there last week. We got Carson to do a soundbite for it, and it's funny to watch people that never been in front of a camera.
Well, he's like, Dad, I'm fine with doing like off the cuff. You want me to talk about something? He's like, but when I've got a script and then I've got a camera in front of me, he's like, and I hadn't studied the script very long. He's like, I just
asked him a question too. I was like, Carson, I just asked him a question, and you could tell he was. He was getting chatty Cathy. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
and he was, and so then
good job, Carson. I know you're listening to this.
Well, I had to, and Carson's such a good kid, and he I knew he would do a good job with it. That's why I specifically asked Carson. I knew that he would do a better job than Aiden would, my son, and. So that's why I asked Carson.
Well, we enjoy making fun of Carson and Aiden, and this just gives us more ammunition for Carson.
Right, yeah. And so Carson, the kids, each class we start with a Bible study. And it's not just just some topic it's not just we're going to study the Gospels or the parables or something like that.
Kids are defending their faith in there.
Yeah, this is an environment to help them learn to do that in. And, Aiden, right now they're studying, does God exist because of pain and suffering in the world? So they have to go out and they have to find, it's funny because I think it was Carson and Aiden, or maybe it was somebody else or something. Anyways, they said, I'm so thankful for the atheists because they got this website full of all this stuff, that I could go on here and study. And so I think it was Carson. Anyways, does God exist because of pain and suffering? Well, there's very few, Aiden's trying to.
If there's pain and suffering in the world, does God actually exist?
Yeah. And so they're working through this, and you're trying to provide the environment because these are the questions that are the kind of the popular questions today. And they will change. You got to figure that one day Aiden and Carson will be us. They'll be in their 40s, and they'll have to deal with whatever the current questions are. Right. But you train them now. And when Thursday night of last week, Aiden was doing our home Devo, our Bible time, and he was trying to work through this because sometimes he'll use our home his time to lead the Devo to do his Bible thing for next Wednesday if he thinks it's relevant enough for us, And so he did it, and I was like, now think about this, Aiden. I was like, remember, you're trying to help us understand how you are explaining this view biblically, that pain and suffering do exist because of. And Aiden, he went through like Adam and Eve had a choice in the Garden of Sin. They dealt with the consequences of that. All of us have a choice to, and we dealt with the fallout of that. And so I just showed him a couple of little like mic drop verses, and he was like, I'm going to change it all just for that verse, right? Sometimes you can do that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have the verse that's like, well, that's a cornerstone verse,
right.
An anchor verse or something like that. But when it comes to raising kids, what you got is verses, right? What you've got is it's not just verses, but chunks, right? Because you have all these scenarios with regards to how you're supposed to raise kids. Like, we put the Bible verses up on our walls, Joshua 24:15. As for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. Or, train up a child in the way he should go. Yeah. Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. All those things are.
Yeah, but bring them up in the training and admonition.
Yeah, they are. All those verses are. None of those verses are explicit instructive verses. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, repent and be baptized for the remission of your sins, right?
Yeah, every one of you.
Yeah, he that believes and is baptized.
Right, they're direct.
And will be saved.
Yeah, the train up a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it. Well, God gives us the instruction manual about how to give proper training, but that verse alone just says, train them up, instruct them up. They have to go through this training, and so but me and my idea and Satan, there's a lot of room for Satan to wiggle in there to make me think that I'm really training them the way they should go, because I'm, you know, and you think you take the normal society today, and this is the scary thing, you know, you got less than 40% of people in 2023, the latest poll, that think that religion is very important to them. And, well, how is that going to steer families? Well, it's going to steer them if it's not very important to you, and there's less than 40% of our society that believes that, you know, based on that poll, then, you know, this is a real challenge. And so I've said this before, but when you walk into somebody's home, you encounter what they value. And
what do you mean by that?
Well, like you're gonna find out, you know, okay, were they a NASCAR fan, you know, or they Alabama fan, or they, and so, like, you know, I can remember, you know, you move people's stuff, and so you see what's important to them.
19 litter boxes.
Yeah, that's right. Or whatever it might be. You find out who's a hoarder and who's not, and and then who's a pack rat, and who's not, who's really organized, who's a minimalist, and who's not. I have moved very few.
I have not moved a minimalist yet, Bob.
Very few minimalists. Yeah. You know, there's been some people who call and they're like, hey, we just, you know, I literally like text out to guys. I'm like, I need 4 guys to make this move. There's 1 couch, 2 end tables, and a dresser, you know.
That's a college kid.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
That you ain't going to, like, the average American family, you know.
Oh, man, it's crazy what you accumulate.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when you walk into somebody's house, or when you move them, you encounter them. And so the question is, when I walk into your life, I should encounter your God. And really, when I walk into your home, I should encounter your God. If he's first, I should be encountering him in some kind of way, shape, form. And it's going to be evident in your attitude, your hospitality, what's going to bubble up in conversation. And that's one big thing about training up children. Now, you know, we're in the challenges of those things. You know, Carson, he just took on another job, and one of those things, you know, the Next Tech stuff is so important to us. Like, when I was talking to this guy about his job, I said he's not free on Wednesday mornings, you know. And I said, you know, sometimes it's a semester thing. I said, rarely did in the past they haven't gone into the summer. I said, but they might. If they do, like, it's going to affect him. Like, so he's not free from 9:30 to 12 each day, just so you know that. 9 to 12 on Wednesdays. And so the guy understands that and stuff. Well, anyways, Carson's going to be, you know, he's worked with Brad in the past and Tyler some on helping Weed Eater or whatever. Well, he's working with another guy, and I've talked to him about these things. Well, anyways, I'm pretty particular about my grass at times. Like, you let your boys run your mower all the time?
No. I mean, yeah, some, but.
Yeah, I'm a some too, like, but not all the time. But the other day, I'm like, all right, you know, and my mower, it's an 04 model.
Right.
You know, she's fixing to get the antique tag put on her, you know? Right. And, but, like, I'm proud of it, you know. It's right. and so she's made it this far.
Mine's a 19. It'll do wheelies.
Yeah, I have to have the conversation with Carson that says, all right, every time that you pull up this button and every time you throttle this down, like,
do this thing.
This is one less time that we're going to get to throttle this thing down and up. We're going to replace this throttle cable again, you know. Right. And I know that, you know, it's just it's one more thing on the clutch, you know, every time you engage it and disengage. Well, you have to talk about that whenever you got an old baby, the same way that you would if they were going to old lady. You can't run around these older people, you know, and you can't wrestle with granny, so to speak.
No matter how much you want to.
No matter how much you want to, you got to take care of her a little bit more, just like a baby. Well, so I'm showing Carson a few more things on the mower, and I never let him, like, get in the ditches and stuff. Well, now I'm like, okay, this is where you need to put the deck out on the ditch, and, you know, and not just your tire, but the deck's got to ride at this spot, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm sitting there explaining some stuff, and he's got the mower going, and he's listening to that. He's still got the throttle up. Well, all of a sudden, this thing goes, pop, 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 and shuts off. And I'm like, he looks at me. I said, son, you're like 2 for 2 on the mower. Like, you get on it and run it, and then it's like, it just shuts down. I don't. He said, well, I said, what do you think happened? He said, well, the gas it looked a little dirty, but I didn't think that much about it. I said, oh, okay. So I opened up the gas. Man, Chris, there was water, dirty water was in the gas. I had the metal gas cans, and they'd been, sitting down or whatever. Well, when you see dirty gas, the splash kind of going into your mower, like you quit pouring.
Right.
Well, a 15-year-old don't quit pouring.
Right.
So.
Well, let me tell you what they also do. When we got the machine in, I said, we're going to pressure wash all the stuff off it before we carry it in the shop. They're like, okay, go get the pressure washer. Guess what mine did? They went down there, because I always tell them, because they used to have this bad habit, because I try to keep my small engine stuff dry of gas. They'd have this bad habit of bringing me the mower, bringing me the whatever with no gas in it.
Yeah.
So just protracting put some gas in it. Guess what they did? They put fuel in it, but they put it out of the yellow jug.
Yeah, put diesel in it.
They put diesel in it. They filled it. And I pulled on that thing until I was blue in the face. And it's got a Honda engine on it. Usually just boom. I pulled the plug out of it, and I was like, dang, the gas done went bad.
Yeah.
They don't even burn on the plug. And that morning I woke up, next morning I was thinking, why wouldn't that thing run? I done worked everything I could on it. I was like, maybe it's coal. And I got thinking, why didn't that gas burn? Wake you up.
Uh-huh.
Show me the gas y'all put in it, boys. This, boys. Yellow, blue. Gas is red. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun whenever, when you got dual fuel tanks, then you get to drain them both out.
It's all of it goes on the ground.
But then Carson's dad's so conservative that, so anyways, he got to have a chemistry lesson, with seeing water at the bottom of fuel, but the gasoline's still good at the top. But so I told him in the middle of this, and then we also had to fix a pressure washer that had broke too.
Did you put diesel in yours?
No, but the throttle cable was broke, and anyways, we just had to go through. And I just told him, I said, son, here in 2 weeks, I said, you've got to see your daddy in real stressful situations, and we're getting to, I said, you get to see me learn. I said, I'm loving living out James 1 right now, but I said, I know that this patience is going to have its perfect work.
Well, I just told Aiden, I said, just take the carburetor off. I didn't even tell him how. I said, pull the carburetor off, drain the gas out, get some ether put in it, clean it up, put it back together. I didn't give him any instructions. I just left it with him.
Well, I'm not good at this whole small engine stuff, and so that's just another illustration. Like, I'm over here trying to go through and remember my stuff, and I'm having to take carburetors off, take the bowl off the bottom of this thing, and sometimes it's like looking at whatever, but I'm getting to show him some of those things, well, I'm not real good at small engine stuff, and but the Lord really blessed me. Like, we got 2 small engines back working again that I didn't have to go pay $320 to get them to change my plugs and whatever else.
Right.
And but whereas that's been a different training in my son's household versus your son, you can tell him to go do those things because you've trained him in those areas.
Well, it's just a lot of it's because I'm tight too. Mm-hmm. And I've got the tools available to me. So it's like, if we got to pull an axle in the van, we're going to do that ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and that might not be I've not had to have to pull an axle, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes there may be things arise in somebody's family that has not arisen in somebody else's family.
That's right.
And so that's another thing too along the journey of life of raising kids is and having them, go in the way they should go, but putting those principles and then taking the time, and it's okay for them to see me make a mistake. I'm not going to make a mistake on purpose.
Yeah, no, shooting all, and what you're doing is you're providing a ground. You're showing them these things, and I tell you, it always slows down the process when the boys do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just the payout is just greater in the long run, and. This is the honest truth. You know how I knew that Bo was ready to get his training wheels off his bicycle? He said, I believe I'm going to take the training wheels off.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I believe I'm ready to get the training wheels off. I said, okay. I said, hey, he said, I'll do it. This is how you know they're ready. He went to the shop, got a crescent wrench, took the training wheels off, off he went. Yeah. That's how you know they're ready to take the training wheels off, is when they do it themselves. Well, I mean, I can't say that I've ever spent time with Bo. Up until that point, he was 5 or something, showed him how to use a crescent wrench, but he deciphered through it, right? Well, what you got to do is you just got to realize that your kids need to, you need to practice these things in your home with them, because there is no. They need you to provide the real world. You like homeschooling, for example. I'm not saying you have to homeschool your kids.
I am.
But one of the reasons why we homeschool our kids is
I'm just going to say it's been one of the best decisions of our life. I'm not telling somebody they have to, but I'm highly consider it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, a lot of homeschoolers they're almost Nazi about this thing. Like if you don't do it, your kids you're going to hell.
Not that way. Right.
But what I'm getting at is that one of the reasons why is because do I want my boys learning their social skills from other 13-year-old boys?
No,
that's not what I want them. I want them. It's my job to turn them like Jessica asked me the other day. She's like, "Have you spent time talking to Aiden about how he's supposed to treat women?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, how you're supposed to, hold the door for them, how to do all these things." And I was like, "Well, I probably haven't, So now I need to have that conversation with him. He's getting on into his teen years, and girls are going to start being appealing to him, and I need to teach him how to do those things, right? I mean, that's just a small thing, but those are things about his character, right? That's going to define his character. Well, the environment that they're going to work in, like we do with our kids in our Next Tech, this is the environment we got to train them for the environment they're going to work in. I think that sometimes in the church, let me make sure I say this the right way. Well, we've been grinding axes for wood we never really had to chop.
What do you explain that? We've been grinding axes for wood that we never had to chop.
We've spent a lot of time, making sure our kids know that there is only one way that a person is saved. And that's great. Amen. Glory. Hallelujah. They need to understand that. We spent a lot of time making sure our kids know that maybe it's instrumental music or maybe it's whatever the case may be, but we haven't spent time with our kids so that when they leave, that we've spent the quality and quantitative time with them to where it's now you are able to go out and practice these things because you have put them into practice. It's the reason why, when you go to school to get an education for some specific field, you will still have to learn to do that in the field.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. But, they send you to police academies. Does that mean you can come out?
I remember having those conversations with guys going, this is the basic principles to help you stay alive and for you to get some basic knowledge. But then, man, on-the-job training, that's for everybody. There's an apprenticeship that should happen.
But it starts with these basic principles.
And that's right. And I remember having the conversation with you. I've got two things going right now, but one about the homeschooling thing. I remember having that direct conversation with you a couple of years ago, and it was really almost at the groundbreaking point of this podcast. But just the sole factor of that question of, do I want to allow 12, 13, 14-year-old boys to be raising 12, 13, 14-year-old boys and or their daddy. And that's the big thing for me and that influence and who's training them and who's teaching them, all these values. And but on the adversity side, there was a sermon that was preached and that really helped change my focus on a lot of things in life, and it was a sermon that my dad did, and it was one that I was on the brink of trying to leave the nest of my home congregation to go preach full time, and I was debating all these things, and I was so afraid because I was in such a good nest.
Yeah.
And but I remember him preaching, and he actually preached of all things about the golden eagle. Here were the USM Golden Eagles, right here.
Right.
And but the golden eagle, they make their nest high up in the mountains on the cliff tops. And one of these, and I may have spoke about this before in here, I don't know, but it's still a good principle. But anyways, they make the nest, and the mama puts the rabbit fur in there and all those kind of things. Well, at some point one day, the mama comes in and she starts wrecking the nest. She takes the rabbit fur out. She takes anything that's soft that she once put in that nest, and now these little eaglets have to perch. And so if they go to lay down, then it's going to hurt their chest because the sticks are going to poke them. And so what she's doing though is she's building their talon strength to where whenever they're going to grab a hold of prey one day, well these golden eagles they stretch out. They got a 6-foot wingspan. Well, then one day, you know, as they get older, the mom and daddy work together, and there's kind of a beautiful imagery too of life. But the mom comes in and she kind of singles one of those little eaglets out from the rest of them and backs them up. She knocks it off the cliff, and not so that they can all watch one die. Now I got to really learn how to fly.
Yeah, I better listen. Mom was real serious about that cleaning up.
Yeah,
last
so this
night.
thing on its way down starts going, you know, wah, wah, you know, and it's trying to flap its little thing and it's falling to its sheer death. Well, the dad comes in and grabs up this little thing and brings it back up and sets it in the nest. And the next day, the next thing, the next process, you know. And so they're teaching all their eaglets how to fly, but eventually through falling, you know, and flapping, they get strength and then they get confidence and then they go. But they're there to guide them the whole time and to help them and to rescue them. And then at some point, you know, now this thing's able to fly, but it's real uncomfortable for that eaglet when it's having to perch all the time and it's wanting to be pampered. And so for us as parents, it's so the hardest thing to decipher is, while I have them in the nest, is to put them in situations, because every minute I have them in the nest, I need to be trying to prepare them to leave the nest. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges as a parent, to prepare my children while I have them. I want to cuddle them. But at the same time, I know that one of our shepherds told me, he said, because I was getting parenting advice from him one day, and he said, if I can give you any advice, he said, put as much responsibility on them as quick as you can. And he said, and hold them accountable to that responsibility. And then you just keep adding to that responsibility and hold their feet to the fire on those things. And what you're doing, because someday somebody's going to really hold them responsible. Jail time.
Right.
I mean, that's a responsibility. If you speed,
right, you're
going to get a ticket. You shoot somebody, you run somebody over your car, you text and drive and get in an accident, you're going to have real big responsibility. So if there's consequences. And so, okay, I want to love them while I have them in the nest. Well, you can love them. But as you give them this responsibility, you hold them accountable, and then you come back and reinforce and, you know, let's talk about this decision. You know,
well, that's why, you know, our question was, how do we help them in this world, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, this idea of this world is Matthew 28:19, go into all the world, right? That, you know, that wasn't geographics. While it is geographics,
go everywhere.
Yeah, and in every situation, right? And so we have this tremendous, you know. So you go back to these verses, you know, train up a child in the way he should go, right? Well, I'm going to train Aiden differently than I'm going to train Liam, and I'm going to train Liam differently than I'm going to train Bo. And I've got this responsibility.
Yeah, the principles will be the same, but kid specifics will be different.
That's right. I mean, there's these moral overreaching principles that you're going to deal with, but you're going to have to focus. I mean, just look at the difference in Carson and Coleman, right? Yeah. I mean, you're going to have to deal with certain character traits with Carson. Like, there's just certain things that I've realized about the oldest one, you know. Watching the oldest one, he has to learn things differently in the sense of like
the others
pride,
this
kind of getting your way mentality because you're the biggest, you're the oldest, you know, you're the fast, you know, all these things, you know, like you have to deal with those things.
Yeah, Carson's the biggest. He used his biceps the other night to rip a cord out of the TV because he wanted to turn off in the middle of the night. You know, right. When Dad had given permission to the other ones that, you know, if you got a sleepover, you can watch some TV tonight. Well, you know, he overstepped that. Well, then he got overstepped the next morning once I found out about it. You know,
when he pulled the cord out of the TV.
Yeah, he's like, you know, he got up in the middle of the night, or I say middle of the night, 10:15 at night. You know, right. He's ready to he's got to get up and go to work or whatever.
Right.
Well, he gets up and he pulls the cord out. You know, I'll show the little ones. You know.
Right.
And you know, he acts cases, you know, TV watching time with his buddy, you know.
Right. So he had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's because Carson is the oldest.
Right. What I was saying is he asserted himself as the oldest and the dominant
exactly.
kid. Right.
So you have to deal with those things, right? And whether it's the woodshed or what,
Carson, I'm gonna deal with you again about that tonight after you listen to this podcast.
Come see me.
I don't care what day it is. Come see me about it.
And talk to me Wednesday at a class about it. And and really, what you're looking at is this, this idea that my kids are individual. But I have to teach them to work in the world that they'll be in.
Right.
So that means I, as a parent, I've got to be, you've heard me mention this verse many times, 1 Chronicles 11, that we want to be like the tribe of Issachar, who were men that were wise to the times. That we've got to understand the world that we live. I mean, Ben and I were talking about the Budweiser this morning. Not that we want to go get a beer, but, obviously a male 40-year-old, hunting, fishing, likes all my Facebook videos and stuff like that are machining. I'm going to get ads for guess what?
Yeah, beer.
Beer ads, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now I'm getting all these like mock ads. These guys are calling it tranny fluid and I mean all this.
All the jokes about it. I mean, I've seen everything from people cussing it to shooting it with machine guns and
I mean just and like you think about it, like this is a perfect example. Like what were they thinking?
Right.
It's not like we're selling skinny jeans here. Right. I mean, like this. Listen, I am not condoning alcohol in any way,
and we're not condoning trans.
No. I just want you to think about this. They stupidly didn't think about the world they live in.
Yeah.
Right. It's the king of beers.
Right.
So how are you going? What are they going to call themselves if they can't use that pronoun? They're going to say we're the royalty of beers. I mean,
I don't know what they're going to say.
But just like how stupid was this?
Yeah.
Like I've seen all these ads. I mean, not ads, but these videos like the guys that deliver beer. Mm-hmm. They're like, look, they're showing the shelves. Nobody's buying.
Yeah.
Everybody's walking away from this now. Like, what were they thinking?
And this is a perfect example. And I guess you were probably trying to segue into this for your own comments, but this is a podcast, Chris, so I get to talk too.
Go ahead.
I'm just messing. No, but that's a perfect example in the fact that you sometimes one decision that you can make can change so many things in your whole world. I mean, you think about the you think about the marketing and everything that Bud Light did to themselves on that one decision.
Bob, it's for this one simple thing. They don't understand the world they live in.
And it affects everybody around them. And now the same thing with your kids. If you make those big, huge, overarching, you make stupid decisions in the world that you're living in, like it can affect so many things.
Yeah, and that's why you've got to understand your world, right? So we got to equip our kids with, like when you did this thing Sunday where you're showing the stats about one of them that won't even asked in '98. What was it?
Oh yeah, is marriage important to you?
Yeah, is marriage important? You know why? Because in the '90s, we just all. Well, I'm gonna grow up. I'm gonna get hitched. I'm gonna have my youngins. I mean, it's just like that's only the '90s were only what 20 years ago. 25 years ago, 1998. I mean, I remember it.
70% of people were patriotic 1998. Now 30% say it's
why? It's all this stuff is the news media, social media. The world that we live in. That's why it's important that we understand this world. It's not that it's not that God wants you to be part of this world, very clearly, 1 John tells us, love not the world nor the things that are in it. But John 3 and verse 16 says God loved the world. What's he talking about? And 1 John, he's talking about the junk. Right. Like it's the same thing as the parables of Matthew 13. That third parable gets caught up in all these deceitfulnesses of riches and all these things, the stuff that this world has to try to draw us back in. Can't get worried about, so what we got to see is like we got to be people that understand, look, our kids are going to operate in this world. I mean, we're going through this process now of trying to, we got our boys, some of our members here had these Gab phones for their kids. So we knew that eventually they would have to have a phone in their life. I mean, it's just the world we live in. You communicate, we call it a phone.
Right. It's a computer.
Yeah, we hardly use it for a phone. We use it for everything else. And so we've got to realize, like, we had to figure out a way that we could help our kids. We took Liam Bo to the doctor to get his just regular checkup. And the doctor asked him, how much screen time does he get? And they're like, what you talking about? He's like, how much time does he spend on his phone? He was like, he's 9. He doesn't have a phone. And they're like, good job, Mama, Daddy. He said, almost every kid that's 9 has a phone now. What do they need a phone for at 9 years old? You know what it is? It's so that parents can absentee themselves and let the work. We send our kids to Rome and they come back acting like Caesar.
Yeah, and we wonder why.
And so, it's us being wise to the world we live in. That there's Satan is not changing the sins that are out there. He's just swapping tactics is all he's doing. His ghoulie suit just looks different, right? You remember when we were a kid, it was just mossy oak. Remember that?
Yeah.
Mossy oak camo was all you had. Now there's like 9 billion kinds of camo you can get out there. And then I remember when Realtree came out, like, I won't even go wear that mossy oak no more.
I've been pronouncing it wrong. I've been pronouncing it ghillie suit for all these years. It's really ghoulie suit, right?
I don't know.
It's a ghillie suit.
Yeah, no. Chris said it's ghoulie, and he's right. I'm sure.
Am I right?
I'm sure you're right.
I don't know.
I mean, you're right. Like, I'll stand to be wrong because, I made fun of you about Teddy Roosevelt, but really, it's spelled the same way you spell rooster, Roosevelt, rooster.
Which is right? Do you know?
I mean, I think Roosevelt, the way you said it, and I made fun of was right, and so
I don't know.
I'm repenting. I'm just trying to repent right now of saying,
Bob, you make fun of the way
wrong.
I say things so much.
Say story right the other day.
He said it twice in a sermon, right? He said the word story. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the world for saying ghillie suit all these years.
Ghillie suit. I don't know. Maybe it is a ghillie suit, but
I think it is. All right, yeah, but yeah, they had all these. You got. I mean, you can even get camo with pink in it now. You can get camo with orange in it now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that Satan has not changed. There's no new sins he's coming up with. He's just packaging it differently
Different
for us.
ways.
And so we've got to be wise to that. You if you want to be effective as a parent, that's what so many of these parables that Jesus talks about. We kind of unpackaged this parable in Luke 16 last week of the unjust steward. He's talking about, listen, the people of this world are more wise to the resources that are available to them. This guy in this parable in Luke 16, he's saying this guy uses the resources available to him to make it to the next stage in life. He can't be the steward anymore, so he knows that the next stage, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do. We have got to realize that in order to be a wise steward of our time with our kids, we've got to help them think about how they're going to get to the next stage. And that is, like you said, pulling the rabbit fur out and kicking them out of the nest. There's a point of that. And I tell my boys a lot.
Yeah, and you don't kick them out of the nest the same night you pull the rabbit fur out. You got to prepare them to I see these, I've seen the golden eagle, like they will fly down. They got like a goat that's standing on the edge of the cliff. Well, that eagle cannot pick up a goat by itself and kill it. But what that eagle can do is it'll fly down with its talons and snatch that goat for a second and get its balance off, and then it lets it go. Going through the air, and then it just tumbles down the mountain, and it
just sounds so funny to me.
You're so.
It's just. Have you ever watched these mountain goats? I mean, like they're standing on the ledge the size of this mic stand right here.
Goodness, it's crazy. And so but the talons got to be so strong on that eagle, and so it knocks that goat off balance, and then the goat dies, and then it just goes down there and it has its meal. But in order for those talons to be strong enough to pick up an 80-pound goat or however big it is, it's got to have the strength. Well, we know that there's going to be things in our kids' lives that they're going to face stuff. The principle's all the same. As you said, the camo changes, but the principle is if you're going to hunt, you're going to have to be camoed. You're going to have to camouflage your life, and from the things that are going to be attacking it. And so, but what we're doing though is and that's kind of just a general principle. Like sin, all in all, is going to be, it's going to come in different packages for different people. You're going to have to tailor different things. One kid might be more prone to anger management, and another kid might have addictive behaviors. And so we have to tailor those things to try to help them. Another might be suffering from their pride, or arrogance or whatever it might be. And so you have to work on all those things.
And you have to see them.
And then also, what are their strong points? How can I capitalize them and help them? One might be a great speaker. one might be a great singer. You know,
Yeah,
one
Carson does. I mean, like I've watched Carson. Jessica and I were talking about the other day, like how good of a job he does with his song leading. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just really grown in that, and you realize that Carson does a good job with that. So I need to make sure that I encourage Carson in the right way.
Yeah, right.
Because I don't want Carson to get a big head.
Right. And people tell me, they're like, oh, Carson did a good job. And I'm up there as his dad going, why aren't you looking at the audience? Like, I'll fly away. Right. Why can you not look at your brothers and sisters and say it?
Sing this song.
He's like, well, but he's like, I'm trying to focus in on.
Or he gets up and what did he say? He's like, it's so good to see our young youth.
I know. We were cracking up. And it was, and I say that, and then, his mom was like, that's so precious, that he said that. And it was a sweet thing.
It was a sweet sentiment the way he said it.
Because, Liam is getting up and praying, for the first time after becoming a Christian.
He's 3 years younger than Carl.
You're 3 years older than him, and you're calling him a little youth.
Yeah, exactly. But
Pot's calling the kettle black.
Well,
Carson, thanks for giving us all the ammunition on this podcast.
Well, it's like when Aiden says things like, when I was a little kid, and you're like,
when I was a little kid, I'm 14.
Yeah, you just want to laugh. 15, you know what I mean? Like, zip your fly and tell me that again.
By the way, if you really want to raise your kids right, start a podcast and start talking about them.
Shame them.
Shame them.
Digitally shame them so that everybody will hear their flaws.
We're horrible. Look, I think about what you were saying a minute ago about being wise. And, Psalm, I think it's 90, verse 12, Lord, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And that's Brother Tom's one of his favorite verses. And he's the one who's helped me memorize that verse. And because it is so important. And so from the time a kid is born till they're 18, you got 6,570 days of them with them. And every single one of us, you think, man, that would take forever. But every single one of us, we look back. There's nobody that I know of who says, man, doggone, I just wish that I could just go back and spend 4 more hours at the office or 4 more hours, working at the assembly line or whatever. Everybody says, I wish I could go back and spend one more moment with my kids or have, get them back. Let me redo this situation. And so, I mean, one thing that I encourage everybody to do is, I don't know about y'all, but I'm praying for my kids and their decisions. I'm praying for them and with them. And I want them to hear me. Millie, she'll be like, Dad, you didn't pray for my husband tonight, And it's like, yeah, you're right, Millie.
Well, you've been at a terrible.
I don't
think it's gonna work out for you.
Yeah, and it's just praying for her and her future. I pray with the boys, and and I try to be real specific at times. We'll have our family Bible time, but there's times that I want to go in the room with them and just spend time with them and say, listen, boys, I just want you to know, we get real busy in life, but there's nothing more important than you going to heaven, and you got to pick, you got to make real good decisions, and you need to pick the best Christian to be your spouse that you can ever do. And we're going to pray about those things. We're going to pray about your decision making, not only for this week, but for the future. And it's fine for parents. I mean, it's fine for kids to hear parents pray for their children, even when you're frustrated with them, because there's no better one. If I'm talking in the throne room of God, there's a respect level for me as an individual to pray for my child. And whenever I'm so frustrated at them, not because of little things that they did, like
Lord, he jerked that cord out the thing,
like poured dirty gas and whatever, but if your child is suffering with a serious attitude problem with respect, pray to God about that in front of them. And if you're tearful and emotional about it, it is great for them to hear that. You will help deliver their soul from hell. And if your child's suffering from pornography, if you're catching them on it multiple times, whatever it might be, if it's a drug addiction, attitude issues, I don't know what it might be, then pray out loud and with your child and ask God to deliver them from these things. And it's okay to be humble. And I think that's we don't have a lot of prayer warriors in this life, and man, to be a prayer warrior for your child and with your child about issues, and man, it's not just praying with them, One, we gotta get rid of just thinking that just praying before meals is the only time that we're praying. In fact, I mean we're way losing that battle.
Oh man!
If you're just praying over your bowl of cereal, you know, and
bless this sugary
yeah
flour to
the nourishment of our bodies.
Right.
Got a good little thing for our food. Let's eat. You know,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but yeah, listen, like prayer in those times. Those are not for God. Those are for us. That's just to put another discipline in our life to go, man, these blessings really come from God. But coming.
And your kids also see you saying, Lord, I need your help.
Absolutely.
Because, there's the thing we have in our house that you can't do is say can't.
Mm.
So like if you say I can't, if I tell you to do something and you act like it's just going to kill you, I can't, you lose every available resource from me at that point. I will not help them if they say I can't, because I've never given my kids a task that they can't do. But what it is they've just decided it's hard and I don't want to do it. So they use the word can't. And because I always tell them, use every resource, including me. If you think that you just, there's this thing that is beyond your control, come see me. I'm going to help you work through that, because I want them to understand that when you say can't, you mean that I'm throwing in the towel. Never, ever do that, boys. You got to realize that when you're working through this, there's a process. God wants you. Do you think God needs your prayers to help you?
No.
What God wants you to do is understand that He's your source.
Yeah.
You know, that's what you're doing, is you're showing Him.
It aligns us with Him. Right.
Exactly. Lord, I'm raising these boys, and I'm struggling with it. And here it is at 4:30 in the morning, and I got a long list of things I got to do today. But these boys of mine, I got to make sure that I'm getting them to heaven. Please help me to do this.
Yeah.
And then when they pull the cord out of the wall, and they've done something like that 15 times, and you have to be like, we're just going to have to pray about this.
Yeah, and another thing too is, disciplining children. If you want verses on disciplining children, like we can hammer them out. I mean, I've studied that. I studied about it. What led me to study about it even more was whenever we were doing foster care before several years ago, took in a kid from the church, and anyways, I had to really study it out because, and man, I'm telling you, like most of the discipline in the Bible is about chastening and is about corporate discipline.
Yeah. Woodshed.
Yeah, and there, and so I have literally studied this out, and I know that every Bible verse that I could find on disciplining children is I just don't know how else to study, with it. But anyways, disciplining with accountability and taking care of, of our kids. And
but remember, that's what it's supposed to be, is discipline.
That's right. It's not about necessarily control, because you're trying to allow them. I mean, you think those little eaglets, they can jump out of that nest anytime they want to.
Right.
And but Proverbs 13:24, he who spares his rod hates his son.
That's some tough discipline right there.
I mean, you don't put the discipline, you don't put the rod in their life of accountability. It says you hate his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly.
Listen, we've been sold a lie that we don't think we need. That we try to do these love parenting and stuff like that, or whatever it's called, these emotional parenting or whatever they call it. I can't even remember the name of it now. Where gentle parenting, that's the word.
Yeah.
That is not synonymous with being the. There are times when you need to be gentle. When this is
it's not biblical.
There's a hinge. There's certain hinge moments, right? Mm-hmm. Where your son comes to you and he's like, "Dad, I say son because that's all I've got. I've done this thing, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be punishment for that, right? But I've got to handle that gently, right? Mm-hmm. I've got to handle that very delicately, because I don't want him to. Because there's going to be some punishment, some discipline from this, no doubt about it.
And there can be discipline that's not punishment per se.
But what you don't want to create an environment where they're like, "Well, I ain't never doing that again."
Mm-hmm, right.
But there still has to be discipline accompanied. So the only gentle parenting. See, this idea of gentle parenting is like, tell me, do you think that it made Sally feel bad that you smacked her in the face? What do you think you should do about Sally's face? They could care less about that. Mm-hmm. they don't care one bit about Sally's face at Millie's age. At what, she's 4 or something like that. Yeah. So it's not like you may make her feel bad for a minute or two, right? But what she needs is the woodshed, right? She needs. They need this. We've been sold this lie. The 90s sold us this lie that you shouldn't spank your kids, that you shouldn't discipline your kids, that you shouldn't be harsh to your kids. Now, I'm not going to say you need to take them out here with barbed wire wrapped around a bat and whoop them.
Yeah, and look where we are 23 years later.
Yeah, look where we're at. Tranny fluid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
I mean, that's it.
That's right. Listen to talking about disciplining and love. Listen to what Hebrews 12 says. And you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as sons. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens.
And look at the way he ties that in.
He says, and scourges every son whom he receives. Scourges is what Jesus had on his back.
Right.
All right. Now, we're not saying to whip your kids with a whip on the back. There's a difference between beating and you getting on CNN news, at the top of the hour,
right, versus
putting a discipline in your child's life with punishment.
Listen, it may come the day where the belt or the wooden spoon gets you on CNN. Mm-hmm. We ain't talking about beating them with what you're talking about right now is abuse, right? Yeah. But it may be the day. So make those decisions now. Make those decisions now that I'm going to do this no matter what the world tells me. I'm going to make sure that I hold my kids accountable.
Verse 7, if you endure chastening, God deals with you as sons. For what son is there whom a father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, if you're without discipline or without the punishment, you're without the whipping. But if you're without the whipping, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate and not sons. You're not considered a son of God if you're not disciplined by him.
Yeah, just think about the way that he paints that,
For furthermore, we've had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the Father of the spirits and live? For they indeed for a few days chastened us as seemed best to them, but he for our profit, that we may be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. That's from the New King James Version.
Yeah, he uses this idea that if you're not, he's using this natural understanding of the way things are successful. Mm-hmm. If you're not being disciplined by your father, he doesn't really consider you a son.
He's teaching you that you don't. If my child won't obey me, then he's not going to obey God, who he has not seen.
That's right. And so he uses this idea that God, we have discipline. That God brings us through some of these disciplines himself, right? Not that God, punishes us. That's not what he's painting this picture of here. But God, there's these things that you go through. Your daddy whooped you. Yeah. The reason why your daddy whooped you is because he loved you. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to suffer things in this life. That's just the way it goes. You make bad decisions as a son. Your daddy deals with you from that degree. If he doesn't deal with you, he doesn't really consider you a son. Right. He consider because a good daddy does what? Takes care of his boys, disciplines them. Right. Brings them through this. He's saying the same thing about the way God deals with us. God deals. Listen, your job as a daddy. Look what it says. They did it for a few days, right? You look back at our time with our kids, man. It seems like it's flying by now. Mm-hmm. It just seems like a few days.
I know it.
And yet here we are. We're getting ready to start turning ours loose. It's not going to be long, and our boys, they're going to start walking out of the house. Right. And it's just a few days. Well, he's talking about forever right here.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. And I'll tell you this too. I've whipped my kids. And trying to be consistent. That's another thing. But also there's been other ways that I've disciplined them that wasn't just taking something from them. When our kids aren't working together, when they're having a crab walk with a 2x4 between them that's 8 foot long and they're having to get to the other end, you have to wait on your brother. And if you hit the ground, their triceps are burning, and that one, and I don't know, anyways, when you get to if you can't get to the other end of the driveway, and it might be a 40-foot section, it might be a 20-foot section. You can't get to the other end together, then guess what? You fall, you're going to have to do it again. So all that burning in your arms, you're going to have to go do it again, and now you just got to repeat. And so, why can't y'all work together on this? And so it's pretty fun watching them put a board in part of their lap, and they have to crab walk with it, going forward. And, well, that's a struggle for them, but then they also have to work with each other, and they're still mad at each other.
Carson and Millie doing that.
Yeah, right. I remember somebody telling me about their two teenagers. They were fighting when they come home, and their kids were fighting. I mean, fist fighting.
Right.
He said,
"It wasn't my mama, was it?"
No. He said he handcuffed them together and made them trim the hedges in handcuffs together. You know this guy, and these two boys have been at church. You've seen them at church. Anyways, they're handcuffed, trimming hedges, and he's like, you talk about raking up the hedges whenever you got
one hand.
You got to rake together. Mm-hmm. Anyways, there's lots of ways of discipline, and some kids, you'd be surprised how much they hate holding hands, how much they hate sitting in front of the TV watching you watch it, and anyways, there's lots of push-ups.
So, but anyways,
there's lots of things, but you got to put the discipline in them.
And all this is about helping our kids understand the world they live in. Mm-hmm. Because the world they live in is trying to get them. The world they live in is trying to draw them into it. We've got to help our kids to be conformed to this, not conform. That's actually
to Jesus.
Conform to Jesus, right? But still be in this world that they're going to live in.
And that's what Jesus prayed in John 17. The Lord, they be in the world, but not of the world.
Yeah, and so they're going to, our kids are going to dress. They're going to act. They're going to talk. I mean, all our boys, they sound like they're from the South.
Yeah.
They dress like all their buddies. They do all the same activities. I mean, they play football. I mean, all those things. Mm-hmm. None of our boys play hockey.
Mm-hmm. It's just not. There ain't no ice down here.
Yeah, I mean, if you got ice down here,
if there's ice down here, it's in a cooler.
Yeah, you got it about.
Freezer.
Yeah, if the lid's open, you got it for about 15 minutes.
Yeah,
and so we're just, they're going to be part of this world to some degree, but they can never claim this world as their own.
Yeah, and then here's another thing too that I think that we really need to touch on about children and having them be successful in the world, and we're not to this point yet. But when they do go to college or trade school or just go into the workforce and being that influence, but being there as a influence to them still, but not necessarily the hierarchy of discipline. Like that's where they've kind of they've left the nest, right, and they're making their own decisions, and I'm having to do those things at a distance. And then the other thing that I think a lot of parents really mess up on is allowing my son or daughter to leave and cleave to their spouse.
Oh boy.
Because that's helping them be successful. Like there's a thing in society today and we got to be careful about this in the church, because there's people who are raising their children to tell their daughter, you don't have to depend on a man.
Yeah, boy.
And telling my son, you don't have to depend on a wife.
Yeah, boy. You think about just setting up for a failure there, buddy.
That's right. And so those are challenging times. And when people go, well, I'm not interfering with my kids. Well, when your daughter comes to you for advice and she's married to her husband, we have to be careful about where, making them successful in the world and helping them make their marriage successful. Like the advice you give to them, you got to be careful about what you're going to put on your can. What you're gonna write on the can of your soda, and that's you're gonna steer that in that direction in their world with right. advice that you give to them, even whenever they're when they're out of the nest and they're forming their own nest.
Right. And
I want to sit in my nest and go, here's how you need to build yours.
Right.
We can be that influence, but man, teaching them about.
Well, I mean, there's just so many problems associated with that. Because. Really what you end up with is kids that never grow up. You end up with husbands that never get married, wives that never get married. They may have taken a vow. They may be married, but they never become the wife that they're supposed to be. And that's all about helping them leave the nest, but that's helping them understand the world they live in. Because, when their mamas are telling little girls, like, you don't need a husband, that's not what my Bible teaches us.
No, you're telling them something that goes against what God teaches, and what if it's my word or God's word, I want my kid to follow God's word. And so when we give advice, don't tell them to follow their heart. Tell them to follow God's word, because my heart will lead me astray. Satan can deceive my heart real quick. Jeremiah 17 is real clear about that.
Boy, your heart is deceitfully
above all things.
All things.
Who can know it?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we appreciate you guys joining us today. We'll catch you next week.